Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are taking a deep dive into the incredibly high-stakes world of medical device recalls and MDR compliance. We're going to systematically unpack exactly what the source materials tell us about managing a crisis when a device fails. We'll keep everything structured, completely clear, and most importantly, actionable.
But first, I want you to just imagine this scenario for a second. A field report comes in. Your device is malfunctioning, and it carries a potentially fatal risk. Boom! The clock starts ticking immediately. The stakes are literal life and death, and regulatory bodies expect action right now. Are you actually ready to respond, or are you going to be scrambling to find the rulebook?
Okay, so what's the game plan? Let's quickly run through our roadmap. First, device failure and risk assessment. Second, health risk determination. Third, emergency FSCA management. Fourth, FSCA report preparation. Fifth, FSN communication. And finally, authority submission processes.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Device Failure and Risk Assessment.
Before we get into the weeds, we absolutely need to nail down two foundational acronyms from the source material that you are going to hear constantly. First, an FSCA. That's a Field Safety Corrective Action. This is the actual physical or administrative action a manufacturer takes to reduce the risk of a serious incident. Then we have the FSN, or Field Safety Notice. This is the formal communication sent to your users and customers explaining that FSCA. You literally cannot have a successful recall without mastering both of these. So, how do we actually pinpoint patient and user risks after a failure? Well, the sources outline 3 cumulative criteria to establish whether an incident officially triggers vigilance reporting. First, an actual malfunction, a use error, or deterioration in the device's performance has to occur. Second, this incident led, or could have potentially led, to a serious outcome like death or severe health deterioration. And third, a causal relationship between the device and the incident is established, or at least strongly suspected. If, and only if, all 3 of these criteria are met, you've got an officially reportable event on your hands.
Moving right along to Section 2, Health Risk Determination.
Regulators don't just look at a broken device in a vacuum. No, they conduct a rigorous health hazard evaluation, or HHE. And what's really crucial here are the specific factors they scrutinize. They dig into the history of similar injuries. They heavily weigh if the device is used in vulnerable clinical populations, think pediatric, surgical, or geriatric patients. They also assess the absolute likelihood of the hazard manifesting again and evaluate both the immediate and the long-term physiological consequences to the patient. Make no mistake, patient vulnerability drastically amplifies the threat level.
And this formula right here beautifully illustrates the math behind it all. Risk is formally calculated using this standard formulation. Risk equals the probability of the health hazard occurring multiplied by the clinical consequences of that specific hazard. It's a highly structured, objective way to quantify exactly how dangerous the situation is. And that math directly dictates whether you're staring down a severe Class 1 recall or handling a lower risk situation.
Which brings us to Section 3, Emergency FSCA Management.
If an emergency hits, the step-by-step guidance from the sources is incredibly rigid. Step 1. Immediately stop the distribution of all affected models. Seriously, do not let the problem spread any further into the market. Step 2. Assemble your cross-functional crisis team right away. Step 3. Document absolutely everything. Every single communication and decision timeline needs a paper trail. And Step 4. Deeply assess the patient safety risk, because that assessment is going to dictate every subsequent regulatory move you make.
Now here is the really crucial point. The timelines under the EU medical device regulation are completely unforgiving. Just look at these reporting deadlines. For a serious public health threat, you have a mere 2 calendar days to report it. If a death or serious health deterioration occurs, you have 10 calendar days. For other serious incidents, it's a maximum of 15. And notice my emphasis there. These are calendar days, folks, not business days. The compliance clock does not stop ticking for the weekend or for holidays.
All right, let's look at Section 4, FSCA Report Preparation.
So what goes into the actual report? You can't just send a note saying, hey, it broke. You must explicitly detail the technical root cause and provide all the necessary background info. You've got to list the exact affected model and lot numbers, right alongside the unique device identification, or UDID, details. Authorities also require relevant parts of your risk analysis and exact market distribution figures. You can't hide anything here. This document must give the competent authorities a completely transparent technical view of both the failure and its footprint in the market.
Next up, Section 5, FSN Communication.
You really need to understand the fundamental difference in audience between these two documents.
the FSCA report we just talked about, that is highly technical, aimed solely at competent authorities, and formatted in precise XML and PDF structures. The FSN, on the other hand, goes directly to the end users, the patients, and the distributors. It must contain clear, easily digestible instructions, and, this is critical, the sources emphasize that there can be strictly no downplaying of the hazards in the FSN. Your communication style has to pivot dramatically to serve these vastly different audiences.
When you're drafting that FSN, you have to use the standard European Commission template. No improvising. It needs to include unambiguous identification details, like the UDIDI and your single registration number. The clinical description of the malfunction must be totally balanced, meaning no cherry-picking the positive data just to obscure the true risk profile. Finally, don't leave your users guessing. Give them precise, actionable instructions on exactly what they need to do with the device next, and make sure your contact information is crystal clear.
Finally, Section 6, Authority Submission Processes.
The technical aspects of submitting these documents are incredibly rigid. Again, you must use the standard EC templates. When you submit the FSCA report, you are technically required to export and attach it in both PDF and XML file formats. It's a strict formatting requirement you simply cannot skip. You then have to submit these to the National Competent Authority, or NCA, of every single affected member state simultaneously, as well as to your own home NCA. Ultimately, this entire process flows through the UDM-EE-DAMD vigilance module to ensure total cross-border transparency.
Now, take a look at the concept here. It might just look like a simple green checkmark, but it actually represents a massive, highly coordinated effort. It's the final validation of your corrective action strategy. It proves that your initial risk assessments, your emergency containment, those deep technical reports, and your multi-country XML submissions were executed in perfect alignment with regulatory law. Honestly, getting here is the ultimate goal of the entire process.
To wrap things up, I want to leave you with a bit of a warning directly from the source material. Do not manage your compliance in regional silos. If you do a so-called voluntary correction over in the US for a software bug, and that exact same vulnerability exists in your European units, well, you've just automatically triggered a mandatory FSCA in the EU. So ask yourself, does your organization's global strategy actually account for this domino effect? It's a complex puzzle for sure, but understanding this structured playbook is your absolute best defense. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Stay curious, stay compliant, and keep learning.